Hey everyone, my name's Calvin and welcome to my Procreate watercolor tutorial. In this video I'm going to make a super simple loose ice cream cone illustration like this one. And it's so easy to do. It's probably going to take 3 or 4 minutes. I think you'll love this one. So I'm going to start out with a new blank watercolor paper, and I'm going to use the normal watercolor brush kit, and I'll put links to both of those in the description. I'm going to grab the abstract round brush with a kind of bright ice cream pink color, and I'm going to set the abstract round brush pretty large, and I'll just do some really loose kind of ice cream shaped blobs up here like this. And let me zoom in here and grab the water blender, and just big enough so I can fit it in there. I'm just going to blend this a little bit, but I'll leave some of the hard edges behind. And I'll make sure in a few areas to add some kind of watercolor details like this. So I'll use a pretty small blending tool, and I'll just sort of pull the light and dark shades together in this kind of spidery pattern. And it does make for a pretty realistic watercolor kind of blending effect. Just make sure that if you do this effect, you go over it again on a much larger size and just barely tap them so they're a little bit less defined. So now the ice cream is done. I just need to do the cone next. So let's zoom in over here, and I'll make a new layer and choose a pretty kind of light brown cone color. I think something like that. And I'll use the abstract round for this one too. A bit smaller size though than I did the ice cream. And I'll just roughly sketch in the cone. Okay, that looks pretty good. I think I want to reposition everything up just a bit. There we go. And the cone is good, but I think the angle is wrong. So I'll just use the arrow tool, and I'll just set it to freeform. And then I can stretch out that cone just a little bit. There we go. That looks a little bit better. And let me sharpen the bottom of it. Now I want to add some details to this cone. I think the best way to do, you could do this anyway, but I think my favorite way is I'll just make another layer on top of the cone. I'll use my selection tool set to freehand, and I'll just roughly select the sort of outline of that cone. And when I'm on a new layer, maybe I'll use a darker color so you can see it. If I use that abstract round brush again, you can see it's only coloring within that selection. So because I selected the cone, I'm just going to go like this, and this is an easy way to add that kind of angled line pattern. And as long as that selection is still active, we can just grab the eraser brush and set it to about the same size as we did this with, and I'll just go in the other direction. And I want to create all these kind of angled square, almost cell shapes. And I can go into the layers panel and set that layer to multiply, set it to 0, and then just slowly raise it up until I can just barely see that. And once I'm happy with it, just to keep everything organized, I can just merge those two layers together, just so it's easier to manage. And it does look a little bit flat, so I'll add a highlight to one side using the freehand selection tool. I will feather that out, and then I'll go to my hue, saturation, and brightness, and just raise the brightness of that side, and maybe lower the saturation just a little bit, just to balance it out. So this is looking pretty good. I think I want to do the cherry next, so I am running out of room on my artboard here, so I'm just going to shrink everything down a bit. There we go, we've got a lot more room to work here. So I'll do the cherry up here, so let me make a new layer, and I'll choose a pretty red cherry color. And then I'll use that abstract round brush, medium size again, and I'll just do a kind of heart-shaped cherry. And I'll grab a green color for the stem, just like that, smaller size brush though. And the cherry stem is starts out kind of big, and then it gets small as it goes down. I think I do want to add a little bit of shading to this cherry, so I'll use my selection tool and just sort of circle the top half, feather that out, hue, saturation, and brightness, and just raise the brightness, just so it has a kind of highlight at the top. And then as a final step here, I'll make a new layer for all the sprinkles. And I'll start out with the white sprinkles, but I'm going to use the fine liner pen for this. Pretty small size. And I'll just do a bunch of random shaped white sprinkle shapes. And then I'll go over it again in a few different colors. And just make sure a few of your sprinkles are just sort of barely sitting on the edge. I don't know why, but this does give it a kind of more dimensional look. So this one could be all done. I guess I want to add a little bit of an ombre effect to the ice cream here, so I'll go to my ice cream layer, and I'll use that freehand selection tool and just make a crazy selection like that. I'll feather it out quite a bit. Hue, saturation, and brightness, and I think I'll just shift the hue maybe a little bit warmer. And then also I want to drop in a little bit of a shadow onto this cone. So let's go to the cone layer, and I'll do a selection like this, just barely catching the top edge and the side. And I'll feather this one out just a tiny bit, and then hue, saturation, and brightness, and I'll just lower the brightness of that area just a little bit, just so it's a little bit kind of almost burned on those edges. And I think this could be done. I just want to maybe square off the edge of the cone here. So that's pretty much it. That's how I paint a super simple, kind of loose, abstract watercolor ice cream cone in Procreate. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you have any suggestions for future videos, I'd love to hear about them. But other than that, guys, thank you so much for your support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.